My goodness, Michigan, Maryland has become a big game as it is. Let's bring in the former voice of the Michigan Wolverines, longtime broadcaster of Michigan and the Lions, the great Jim Brandstatter. Jim, how you doing, my friend? So great to have you here on Woodward Sports. There he is.
Hey, Brandy.
There you go. Good to see Braylon. Ryan, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing real good.
Fantastic.
Under the circumstances.
Yeah, same thing. It's kind of like they put a pin in the balloon, didn't they?
You know what? That's exactly Jim.
Analogy right there, buddy. Metaphor.
That's a great analogy. How do you feel today? How do you feel today, personally, question one? And question two, what would your message be to Michigan fans right now?
Well, I mean, I'm obviously, I'm disappointed. The whole thing comes down to this. I was ready to go scorched earth on the Big Ten and the commissioner, and I still believe the commissioner acted unwisely, and he acted, in my opinion, like he's a dictator and not a guy that has all of the best interests of the entire conference in his mind when he did what he did last week. Totally and completely unfair, I thought. And I still think to some degree it was. But here's the deal. On Friday of last week, we were ready to be outraged. We were outraged. The letter from Ward Manuel, the president. And then in the last 72 hours, something changed, and they capitulated yesterday when they said, we'll accept all the penalties. What changed? Obviously, someone from within the Schembechler Hall had information, did some things that nobody was aware of. If they were aware, they wouldn't have acted the way they did on Friday. And when they found out, they said, you know what, we this is wrong. We got to go to them and say, we'll take our punishment and we'll move on. And that's what they did. I'm disappointed from within the program, though. You had an assistant coach in Chris Partridge who was, relieved of his duties today, somehow was involved. We don't know the extent of it, but it's disappointing. And maybe more than anything, from the optics standpoint, nationwide, people look at this program as not the cleanest, which we all believe that it should be, and it is. And I feel very badly for this football team. This is a great football team with great talent, great individuals, and I think they're going to be tarred and feathered a little bit when they shouldn't be. None of this is their fault. All they've done is done everything they could possibly do to get as good as they could possibly be. And I'm talking all the way back into, December, January, February of this year, when they're lifting weights. They didn't have anybody giving them information or signs from another team when they busted their ass lifting weights, getting ready for this season. And they're proving it now, game to game to game. And I'm feeling bad for them right now. And the message to Michigan fans, look, don't get off this team. This is a great football team. And if they allow us to play, if they can come up after this adversity, win the next two games and go to the Big Ten Championship and win that'd be an accomplishment that I think we could all write home about.
That's great stuff, Brandy, and everything you said, I completely agree with. Let me just go through that a little bit. I think that's where I am. I feel deflated a little bit, almost like with my tail between my legs, because of that bravado that they came out with over the last couple of weeks. Man, I was ready to go to war with them, Brandy, and to hear the news yesterday, it just makes me feel like I got my tail between my legs a little bit because I was sold a bill of goods, for lack of a better way to say it, that maybe we should have just taken a pause and said, hey, let's let this thing play out. But you got President, AD, and everybody. I mean, it leaves me scratching my head.
It does. And here's the thing, though, and I think we can all look at this, too. I am, like you, feeling bad. I think we were, as fans, kind of given the wrong information. And we're in the same boat, in my opinion, as Jim Harbaugh and a lot of the guys in that staff, and that Partridge must have in some way done it without anybody else knowing, because even the Big Ten, yesterday in their release, This is the quote. The conference has confirmed that it is not aware of any information suggesting Coach Harbaugh's involvement in the allegations. This was written after they knew about the Partridge involvement. So from that standpoint, I think, to be quite frank, even though we haven't heard from him, Jim probably feels the same way we all do. Maybe even a little more so, because that's a guy he hired.
Yeah, 100%. You know, nobody's feeling good. I mean, so we're proud Michigan alums, and I will continue to fight for Michigan. I will continue to lobby for that block game. I don't care if I'm wrong. At the end of the day, I know I went to the right institution. I will never back down off that stance. Brandy, with that being said, let's try to jump into these games for a second. Obviously, Maryland is tomorrow. We believe that Michigan has enough to beat Maryland. We saw Sharon Moore make a conscientious decision last week to run the ball because that was the best option in terms of going against those rush ends and the linebacker, and it worked. So we think we're good. We know we're good against Maryland. But the Ohio State poses a different challenge. I don't believe Ohio State to be as good as they have been. I don't think you do either. But at the same time, it still is Ohio State. They still have their head coach. What's that game going to be like? Take us into the game next Saturday with no Jim Harbaugh on that sideline for these kids.
Well, a couple of things. I have to, I think, figure your way. And I go back to the old Bill Belichick method. Braylon, you played in the NFL. You know Belichick pretty well. Know what he does. It's like, don't let their best player beat you. So somehow, some way, we're going to have to take Marvin Harrison and neutralize him. I don't know whether we'll be able to shut him out, but somehow make Marvin Harrison from Ohio State little neutralized. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you bang him off the line of scrimmage, double him, triple him, whatever. But they're going to have to figure out a way to do something like that. The other thing is that defensive line is going to have to stand up against the run.
Yeah.
I think if they can stop the run and neutralize Harrison, I think they got a great shot. Because personally, the pressure on this young quarterback that Ohio State has, we've seen teams that have been able to get pressure on him, has caused him some problems in the passing game. That would be the defensive effort. And offensively, you know, from my perspective against Ohio State, one, I think Michigan learned a lot last week when they saw the great edge rushers of Penn State.
Yeah.
They had some problems with them, keeping them off J.J. McCarthy. So they're going to have to scheme ways to block Ohio State's great pass rush. And I think if they do that, I think J.J. will have that. But offensively, I think you'll see Michigan come up with every piece of their offense ready and rolling. It won't be just the running game. It'll be the passing game. It'll be the run action. It'll be rollout. It'll be move McCarthy. It'll be drop back. It'll be power run. It'll be 3 tight ends. It'll be spread and run from the spread with Corum and Donovan Edwards. Using Donovan Edwards outside as a receiver, a slot, you know, trying to find the mismatches. And I think against Ohio State, they'll basically pull out all the stops offensively and open up the playbook.
There you go, Brandy. Restore my positivity about the game and in just over a week. Before I give you to your buddy Tom Masaway over there, who's chomping at the bit to get his old riding buddy, let me ask you a question just about the entirety of the situation. Let's say this thing plays out. We beat Ohio State. We go to the Big Ten Championship. We win the Big Ten Championship. Tony Petitti has to hand the trophy to Jim Harbaugh, much like Roger Goodell had to hand the trophy to Tom Brady after he won Super Bowl MVP after being suspended the first 3 games of the year. You win the semifinals, and then you beat whoever makes it in the national championship. What happens then? Jim Harbaugh gets back, wins the national championship. Then what happens in your estimation, Brandy? I don't even know if I'm phrasing that question right, but I figured you would have an answer for me.
I know exactly what you mean. You're wondering, will Jim Harbaugh still be the coach of Michigan?
Hey, you sly old dog, you.
You can coach it any way you want, Braylon. I got that one figured out because you're not the only one that thinks that. And to be quite frank, I think that's in the back of Jim's mind. I mean, he's got to make the determination on his own. Do I want to put up with all this kind of scrutiny, the microscope, all the things that are going to happen down the road? Or do I want to get out of here, get my $10 million, and have to deal with 53 players and a general manager, draft them, and try to win a Super Bowl like my brother did? That's a question Jim's going to have to ask in his own mind, whether he wants to put up with what's going to happen. And you know it, and I know it. They're not going to let up. He's been branded, and the people out there in National College Football land that are uninformed and pontificators without
Paul
much
Feinbaum.
without much substance. And there are a lot of those guys out there. But you can say anything you want to say these days, and you can get away with it, and you're not held accountable. And Jim probably has got to ask the question, do I want to put up with that, or can I can go somewhere else and not have to deal with that? And that's going to be, I think, the big question he's going to have to ask himself.
Yeah, that's real.
Hey, Jim, I was going to ask you about, do you think he'll be here or go to the pros? We just had...
I'm sorry, man.
It's okay. No, we had Tom Thayer on a few minutes ago, the Chicago Bears radio analyst. He played with Jim Harbaugh back in his Bear days, and he talked about how different Jim is now than he was then. He was a more happy-go-lucky guy. Then, of course, he was younger. Now you got a lot more stuff on your plate. What I want to ask you is, I personally don't believe that, A, Jim wanted to sit out the first 3 games of this season on that suspension, self-imposed. And I don't believe that he wanted to have this happen to him as well. I think he wanted to be in court today, sticking up for himself and his team and his honor. And what happened yesterday to me is a travesty. I don't like it. I'd rather go down fighting and bring the other guys down with me. What's your opinion on Jim Harbaugh? Do you think he bought into this, or do you think he's sitting in the back saying, oh, you guys screwed me again?
I think more than anything, Tommy, it's about the greater good. Jim, the one thing I know about Jim, and I think Braylon knows this because he probably talked to some of the players on this team, and the coaches too, for that matter. Yeah. And Ryan, you probably know it too. They love this guy.
Yeah, you do.
These players love Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh has a connection with them from the time that they were recruited. And that's not to be taken lightly. And as you go through this process, you can sit there and say, yeah, let's go all scorched earth. And I'll go down with the ship kind of a thing. And I think you're probably right. In his back of his mind, you want to do that. But the big picture was, what's that going to do to this team and these kids that we've nurtured? We've gotten them to the edge of a season that will be unforgettable. That could be a national championship. Do I want to put them in jeopardy and this effort in jeopardy? And for Jim, with the relationship that he has with this team and those kids, I would. It doesn't surprise me that he took the advice, backed off, given the Partridge thing and whatever that was. We don't know exactly what it was, but given the fact that there clearly was something there, or Partridge wouldn't have been relieved of his duties, Jim probably saw the greater good, the bigger picture, and said, I want these kids to have this time and this moment. And by me going through this whole thing and taking everybody down with me, it does not benefit these kids. And that's the last thing Jim Harbaugh would want to do.
But don't you think, Jim, and you're a former player, Braylon obviously a player, don't you think that this took the starch out of them? It took the starch out of us. These kids had hey, who's in front of us next? Let's go. I asked Braylon last week, how bad do you want to play in this Penn State game? He's like, give me the ball. Now, everyone's going to look at him and they're going to laugh at him. Your coach got caught. Hey, where's your sign stealer? I just think it takes the starch out of him, and I think it puts the Ohio State game in doubt for me.
I don't know how they're going to react. All I know is this, and I know Jim has a great relationship with this team, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I know we haven't heard any reports if he didn't actually probably address the team
right
about this whole thing. It said, "Look, guys, this is what's going to happen, and don't let it alter your focus on what your goal was." You'll remember Blake Corum and J.J. McCarthy. These guys were young kids when they got beat by Georgia in my last game down in Miami. And then they got beat again last year, and they all said, we're coming back to win the Natty. We're not coming back for stats. We're not coming back for this or the number of touchdowns or career yardage. We're coming back to win the Natty. And it's not just about, they've got a greater goal, I think. And I think that they can push this aside, say, you know what? This is stuff that is noise on the outside. What was our goal in the beginning of the season? Always was to win the national championship. Nothing has changed. We still have that ability. We just have to go out and take care of business. I think that's the attitude that they're veteran group. They're not young guys that they have a prize that they've been working for the last 3 years. The starts, yes, may have been taken out of them a little bit. I think that this week in Maryland on the road will be difficult, but I think they'll be able to win that game, and it's vital that they do. Maryland is a good team now. Yeah. They've had troubles of late, but we have to win that game, and I think the kids can get that done. And then I think Ohio State will be epic. I think at that point, all the cards are on everybody's table. Everybody knows what's out there, and every kid on that Michigan team, I think, is going to be sky high because that goal is within their reach to get to that national championship playoff.
Well, hopefully after a Michigan win over Ohio State, Jim, we'll have you back and talk about those college football playoffs and a Big Ten championship and all that great stuff. Thanks so much, Jim. It's so great to hear your voice.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, as a Michigan fan,
Jamie one day, Jim the next.
Listen, as a Michigan fan, Jim, it is still hard not to hear your voice on a Michigan broadcast.
Amen. And Lions.
I'm my clothes about it. I learned it.
How about those Lions, Jim?
It sounds so good. It sounds so much different than what we're hearing now.
They're the real deal.
That's right.
The Lions are for real.
Absolutely.
I love the fact I love Dan Campbell, but I love the fact that they've got an offensive line that you can really depend on. Passing and running. That's the difference. This team's got that.
Amen.
Says an offensive lineman himself. Not bad.
I wanted to put Jim on the spot, but I won't do it.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it, my friend.
See you, Brandy.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and Robbie and the rest of the family.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you so much. Absolutely.